killed Santa Claus off screen. Let's review Mask of Light. Hello, gathered friends, and welcome to my July video that's coming out in December. Yeah, we've had some schedule slippage due to time and technical issues. A few videos got canceled, it's a thing. But hey, instead of focusing on all that, why don't we get on topic for this review? I've mentioned this before in the series, but now I'm full on bringing it up, because this is the video where people will actually pay attention to it. Bionicle is over-memed! What I mean by that is that the canon doesn't get the respect it deserves, especially in the reviewer scene. How many times have you seen people review this very movie and not take any notice of the fact that there were at least 2.5 years of story leading up to it? How many times do people look at the toys and be like, wow, Bionicle sure was weird? I remember this sort of crap started out around 2015 or so, for me with the I Hate Everything review. Like, 1 second he says this.
In fact, when I was a kid, I might have been the biggest fanboy of Bionicle on the planet.
But not even a minute later, he says this.
So once that's over, we're introduced to our two main characters. The yellow one and the blue one.
Do you not see the dissonance here? Like, I haven't watched Dora the Explorer in many years, but I can still remember characters like Isa the Iguana, Benny the Bull, Swiper the Fox, the Grumpy Old Troll, and Tico the Squirrel off the top of my head. And those are just the ones I have names for still. Dora stopped mattering to me years ago, but the characters stuck with me because they did matter as characters for me at some point. So for you to say that you were the biggest Bionicle fan, but you can't be bothered to say Jala and Takua, it implies that these characters never mattered to you, the biggest Bionicle fan. Thus implying that the canon never mattered, when it did to so many of us. Many will say that it's a joke and I'm taking it too seriously. I say that it's slightly disingenuous and does nothing but hurt Bionicle's long-term impact. Before 2015, Bionicle was well remembered for its wonderful story and characters. After 2015 though, it was a joke, something to be laughed at and used for internet points. And that's not to say that I can't have jokes made about it. I even do that. But I do that while actually being in the freaking fandom. While revering the stories for what they truly are, even when they occasionally disappoint. Misrepresenting a property, on purpose or not, hurts how others will perceive it. That's why I apologize about digging for jokes so much in the first episode. Because this series is meant to bring the canon to a new audience. And it's not a good idea to deride my favorite fandom in front of that new audience. And that's me, who's actually somewhat qualified to talk about it. Having someone who is obviously very unqualified to be talking about this material be the one who brings that material to a new audience is a very bad thing. And if I ever do that to some other fandom, I demand that I get called out for it. Ask for something better in your fandoms. Don't settle. If something has an image that it doesn't deserve, fight back. That's part of why Legends of the Bionicle exists. This is my way of fighting back that image. Doing my part, so to speak. Maybe even my duty. I could probably go on about this, but believe it or not, we aren't even in the introduction to this review, so let's get into that. The main thing we need to talk about going into this is the characters of Jala and Takua. Now, I have heard some, but not a lot, of criticism towards the idea of focusing the first movie on the Matoran rather than the Toa. But bear in mind that a lot of pre-2004 Bionicle media was centered around the Matoran primarily. We had Manlog 1 and 2, the Borak Online animations, the Borak Call Online animations, along with Quest for the Toa, and Matoran Adventures on the GBA. The only media that focused on the Toa prior to 2003 was the comic books, which you could only get if you were subscribed to Lego Magazine. Or if you just bought them in a shop. Presumably. Children at the time were clearly much more accustomed to viewing the world of Bionicle through the eyes of the Matoran, so focusing on them was a good move. And focusing on these two in particular was an even better move. Takua was the protagonist of the Quest for the Toa game and Menog, introduced in the latter game as an amnesiac Tamatorn, who helps people around the island and eventually becomes the Chronicler. In that same game you met Jala, the captain of the Tamatorn Guard. He was a little stoic in the Flash portrayals, but his friendship with Takua was well established. These two are characters that the audience who knew Bionicle beforehand would already like, and who newcomers would come to love. The personalities are adjusted to be a bit more of a goof and a straight man in this movie, but it's not stretched so far that I can't get over it. Keep the information I told you in the back of your head as we go forward, though. Anyway, let's begin the movie with that sequence I used at the beginning of the series. I mean, it's a good sequence to open up with and gets newcomers up to speed, so what's there really to complain about with it? We open properly with Jala looking around Takoro for Takua. Oh wait, am I supposed to recycle a joke here? I'm sorry, just give me a minute. Takua! Eventually, Jala finds Takua's Koli stick by this oddly low-res texture of Pohatu's mask, and goes inside, finding Takua crossing a river of lava to look at a stone totem of some kind. It's kinda odd that Takua never looked at this totem before, since this is apparently right beneath the wall of history, but we'll let it slide. Jala chides him on doing this when they're supposed to be going to a Koli match, but Takua's gone this far, so he may as well just do his thing and chronicle this sucker. And naturally, removing the totem for inspection causes Indiana Jones shenanigans to occur, and the lava starts rising, the resulting rumbling causing Takua to drop the totem, which falls into the lava. However, it soon rises back up, having shed the stone and revealed itself as the Kanoi Evoki, the titular Mask of Light, which Takua then scoops out of the lava.
Wow, never seen this language.
Takua, that's Matoran text. You read it every day. Anyway, before Takua can cross back over to Jala, the lava breaks, and he throws the mask over to Jala while he tries to serve across with his lava board. Just before the lava proves to be too much for him, however, he's saved by someone we all know and love.
Ah, Toa Tahu!
Chronicler! Sightseeing, were ya? Well, let's take a closer look at those falls!
You know, this movie was one of my first active experiences with the Bionicle lore. I had some familiarity beforehand, but never this deep of a connection to it. And I think you can kinda see why I clung to Tahu. 'Cause man, what an entrance! I mean, dude just surfs in, on lava, and saves Takua's life while cracking jokes. As if this wasn't the coolest thing you've ever seen in your life. Oh yeah, and then he throws his swords at Jala, because he's also that kind of guy. At this point in canon, at least. Anyway, Tahu notices the Evoki and tells him to bring it to the Turaga after the Koli match, and our duo runs off to the Koli field, where Turaga Vakama introduces Tahu, Gali, and Pohatu as they attend the match. And we get a very odd scene.
Pleasure to see you again, Gali.
Thank you, Tahu.
Brother, I am thrilled to be here.
Well, couldn't have our first match without the patron of Koli.
And so I am here. Always a pleasure, Gali. You two, still so ill at ease? Put your petty differences aside. Rejoice!
Oh. I think my brother is afraid of having his fire extinguished.
Sister, against me you'd be nothing but steam. Hot air, as they say.
You see, I could get Tahu getting way too into the competitive spirit of Koli, but Gali is an entirely different story. Whenever the Toa weren't working as a united unit like they should have been, she would always be the one trying to get her brothers to cool their heads and understand that they need each other. So she wouldn't be antagonistic towards Tahu like she is here. she would be telling him to knock it off and that's just a game. And you may be thinking that this could just be bad direction for the voice actors, which was my theory too, until I read the novelization for the purposes of this review. In the book, the lines about him getting his fire extinguished and stuff are played off a lot more as lighthearted teasing for both parties. And they even note Tahu bowing to Gali as he greeted her, instead of it being more sort of offhand as it is in the movie. But Pohatu's reaction to this plays out the same in both versions, as if the movie exchange was what happened both times. Same thing with Anawa's comment about the Toa squabbling. To be honest, it feels like they want Kopaka in Gali's place, and Gali in Pohatu's place, since those three's dynamic already worked like this at that time in canon. Heck, the book Tales of the Masks already has a scene like this with those three, which I think lends some credence to my theory. However, since they needed Pomatoran as one of the inventors of Koli, and Gamatoran since Ali was going to be relevant in this movie, they fit a square peg into a round hole, and just wrote them normally for the rest of the movie. Anyway, Vakama introduces the three virtues of unity, duty, and destiny into the movie. Yeah, the prior media, as far as I can tell, hasn't really focused on them too much before now, but it becomes much more relevant after this point. I won't expand on it here though, since I have to talk about Koli. You see, it was invented by Turaga Whenua and Anawa as a way to settle disputes between their villages, but it became a popular sport in Pokoro, with Huki being among the best at it. It was so popular in Pokoro that someone who I won't mention here actually managed to spread a plague by selling infected Koli balls. Back in Menog, it was more of a soccer-like sport, but after Huki saved Maku from a flying stone with a Gamatoran fishing rod back in the Borok animations, a reinvention of the sport was created that all Matoran now play, thus the tournament. Also, when the Matoran strike their Koli sticks together and say, "play well," it isn't just a reference to Lego's name, but is also kind of a vow, since striking another player is not playing well and will bring dishonor to your village. Shield and stick strikes are exempt from this, however, since that is playing well. I could get more into the rules of Koli, but I'm not noticing too many infractions, so here's a cool sports montage.
Not bad.
Nothing gets by the captain of the guard, unless he wishes it.
I'll keep that in mind.
They become brother and sister later. But let's not focus on that. Let's instead focus on the fact that the game is running late, and Takua decides to do a special move that he briefly mentioned earlier. The novel even used a deleted scene version of him mentioning it, so let's see what he's got. And that was the move that made LeBron cry. But yeah, he misses, and Gakoro gets in one last goal, winning the tournament. And the players all gather to congratulate them.
Not bad for a Gamatoran.
Anyway, as all the players take a bow, the Mask of Light falls out of Jala's backpack, and him and Takua pass it around until Takua leans it just right on his foot, causing it to shine on Jala. Later, we see Taraka no Kama using her mask to translate text on the back during a gathering. This is when we learn that this is the Mask of Light, a legendary mask to only be worn by a 7th Toa, as per some prophecy that we've never heard about before now. Yeah, I've kind of just accepted that prophecies are garbage in Bionicle. Anyway, the Taraka reveal that the 7th Toa must be found, and that the mask probably chose who the herald of the 7th Toa must be. To which Tahu points out the mask glowing on Jala in the stadium as a sign of him being the herald. Jala tries to protest and point out that Takua did it, but Takua just goes along with the narrative of Jala being the herald, and thus the Taraka stick Jala with the responsibility of finding the 7th Toa. Though Jala does manage to weasel Takua into that deal as well to chronicle the journey. After all that, Tahu is curious as to why the 7th Toa would be a thing after they defeated all of Makuta's threats. But Pohatu merely says that Matanui's wisdom is unfathomable, and notes that Gali has gone off to Kini Nui, while he's gonna go around and tell people about the 7th Toa stuff. We cut to Gali, looking up at the sky at the Towa's spirit stars, more relevant in the next movie, and she notices a seventh one appear, and thus decides to meditate on it. You know, I never really questioned why she can levitate before. That's when we fade to, let's face it, the true star of this entire trilogy, Lee Tucker as Makuta.
The earth shudders, my brother. The seventh Toa has begun its approach. Here, again, the prophecies of the Matoran oppose my will. Must I release those who should never see the light of day?
The dude gives Makuta such a presence every time he's on screen, but it's not overdone in any regard. Even if you don't know Makuta's full deal yet, you instantly know that he's not your typical villain. That he's got layers that we don't understand yet, and that leaves an impression. Hard to believe that this same dude also voiced Bling Bling Boy. So yeah, he unleashes the Rakshi, the sons of Makuta, and we cut to Takoro, where Jala and Takua are just about to set off.
Look, don't get mushy, Jala. I have no time for a long goodbye.
I was just gonna say, well, you owe me a rematch on the Coley field.
Nice save!
You're bringing Puku?
Are you kidding? I couldn't leave her behind if I wanted to. Sorry, Puku! No room! Go on home!
Anyway, before Jala and Takua depart, they ask Vakama how the heck they're supposed to know where to go, and he simply tells them to trust in the mask and that it will guide them, as we soon see that it glows when you're going in the right direction, even if Jala is the one holding it. Cut to Kini Nui, as Gali's meditation is interrupted by a disturbance in the local Rahi, which we soon find out is being caused by the three Rakshi, who I will now introduce. Lirak, Rakshi of Poison, Panrak, Rakshi of Fragmentation, and Gurak, Rakshi of Disintegration. Gali is naturally pretty shocked by their appearance, just barely dodging Panrak's blast and hiding in the water with her mask of water breathing, which actually has a nice animation detail where it looks more like her set counterpart while in use. Anyway, she pursues them as they fly off towards Takoro, manages to get there before them to warn everyone.
None have breached Takoro's gates before, and none shall this day.
Well, I guess that hiccup isn't a big deal, since Panrak just gives him a blast and the Rakshi get in. And mind you, that blast hit him with his How On, a How Nuva, no less. These guys mean business, and in an example of why the moment in the Coley scene seemed somewhat out of place, Gali immediately recognizes that this is not a fight that she and Tahu can win, and that this is a situation for all six. And Tahu, to his credit, accepts this, even if he doesn't like it. Keep a note of this. For the time being, though, they need to get the Matoran to safety. Thus, Gali instructs Ali to raise the lava bridge so the Matoran and Turaga can escape while the Toa hold off the Rakshi. In a fight with Lirak, whose poison effect really reminds me of guacamole Doritos for some reason, Tahu gets pinned under his staff, and Gali sends over a water blast to help, right as Tahu manages to flip over to the top, which results in Lirak's staff scratching his mask. The Toa barely managed to escape from Takoro as it begins to sink into the lava, destroying it. Though thankfully without any Matoran casualties. After all that, the Rakshi just fly away, and Vakama says that they were just seekers, who didn't find what they wanted in Takoro. And well, 2 guesses on what they were after. Also, take note of this bit.
Then they seek the 7th Toa. Jala and Takua.
We'll summon the Toa to find them.
Don't trouble the others, sister. I'll see to their safety myself.
No, Tahu, no! We must remain united.
If you insist.
Anyway, we cut to Jala and Takua going through the jungles of Likoro, where we actually get some decent character stuff about Takua.
Is there any place on Matanui where you do feel at home?
I don't complain about Takoro.
But you wander off every chance you get looking for stories. What about your story?
I don't have a story.
Only because you won't stand still long enough to make one. We all have a destiny, you know.
You know me, always different.
Note that one line. I don't have a story. It really just sums up why Takua is so reluctant to take on the role of Herald. Think about it like this. Before Menog, Takua was a slacker who liked to wander around Motunui, much to the irritation of his fellow Tamatorn, who were much more focused on their duty above all else. However, his wandering around and helping people eventually landed him the role of the Chronicler, and made him friends with a ton of people all over the island. Takua found his purpose by defying the Tamatorn tradition of duty, even gaining the respect of the Toa, to the point where they trusted him and his company to protect Kininui when the Toa first came down there to fight Makuta. So, imagine you made your own path in life like that, in a way that no Matorn before you ever had, and then suddenly some unknown force tells you that no, you do have a duty, just like everyone else. Takua's duty as the Herald of the Seventh Toa is a slap in the face to what he feels he's built, a place in life where he's comfortable, and to accept that duty is a hard pill for him to swallow, but one he will grow to realize that he has to, as we'll see. But enough character talk, 'cause BEAR! That they're saved from by Liwa, who knows about their quest.
Ever windfly a gecko bird?
I've been a second, but I never flown one myself.
So yeah, Jawa and Takua fly off on a Gecko bird, without Puku, and, following the mask, they and Liwa soon arrive at Kokoro, where Liwa hears the Likoro drums tell of Takoro's destruction. Jawa naturally feels pretty guilty about not being there, and wants to abandon his quest for the sake of his people, but Liwa notes that it's pointless to do that, and promises that he'll give Takoro a look when he reunites with the other Toa, leaving the two Matoran alone to continue the journey. After getting lost in a blizzard for a bit, they run into some oddly set accurate Borak and Kopaka, who they follow as they go along. It is notable that from this scene on, Jawa is a bit more apprehensive about taking Takua's role as Herald, originally being okay with it once he roped Takua into going anyway, but now that he thinks he failed in his duty to protect Takoro, it's not hard to see why he'd be a bit more salty now. Maybe even blaming Takua when there's nothing he really could have done anyway. We transition over to Tahu, Gali, and Liwa, who observe the lava where Takoro once was.
You worry about scratches. My village is gone. Your power was nothing. My power was nothing.
First, we must be united. Together, we are strong.
Again, keep his reaction in the back of your head. Back to Jawa and Takua, and they are approaching Kokoro when Kopaka, using his mask, notices that the place is wrecked, just before Panrak shoots a blast at him that they barely dodge. Kopaka sends the Matoran away on a shield before skiing away himself, but then gets knocked out by a blast, and Takua takes the Evoki as he tries to cross a river with Kopaka's shield, leaving Jawa to be oddly unharmed, as the Rakshi flies straight for Takua and the mask. Thankfully, however, Kopaka wakes up just in time to blast him into the water before freezing it solid, stopping this group of Rakshi for now.
Good moves.
Even I get lucky sometimes.
Not luck. It's what you do that makes a hero.
Anyway, Puku comes back into the movie, and Kopaka leaves the group to attend to his village, and maybe to ask the other Toa what's up with the Rakshi sickles he just had to make. Jawa, Takua, and Puku go into an underground highway between Kokoro and Onukoro, and Takua accidentally gets separated from the others, leaving him in the shadows. And where there's shadows, there's Makuta. His offer is simple. Bring him the mask, or Jawa dies. Takua refuses, but Makuta just tells him not to be a fool, right before Jawa finds him, and Takua just says that he can't go with Jawa, though not for the reason that we the audience already know of. Naturally, Jawa is mad about this, but vows to find the seventh Toa whether Takua is the real herald or not. Because heck if the captain of the guard is gonna abandon his duty. Makuta sees this and is mad that his goodwill was refused, and thus decides to release his final 3 Rakshi. Kurak, Rakshi of Anger, Vorak, Rakshi of Hunger, and Turak, Rakshi of Fear. And naturally, this is all delivered with the flair of his previous lines. We cut to Onukoro, where Pohatu is meeting with an oddly tall Anua, and he makes the announcement about the Mask of Light being found to the Onu Matoran. How they know what the Mask of Light is has no explanation, but we've got bigger things to worry about as Takua and Puku enter Onokoro. Just as the new trio of Rakshi arrive. The two Toa try their best to fight the Rakshi, but their attempts don't do much good. And as he flees, Takua realizes that this is all his fault, and that there's no real getting away from his part in this. Picking up a Koli stick, he tries to fight the Rakshi, or maybe at least keep them focused on him. And then Tahu is just there already without much explanation. The flow of events is different in the book, okay? My lore is failing me! Anyway, Tahu jumps in and gets blasted by Kurak. And while Liwa gets Takua and Puku to safety, with the Rakshi in hot pursuit, Gali checks on Tahu.
Brother!
Fire has no brothers. Fire consumes all!
And that's why I wanted you to pay attention to how Tahu has acted since the arrival of the Rakshi. When the original trio attacked Takoro, he was bitter about having to retreat from them when Gali told him to, but he relented because for all of his stubbornness, he's not too stupid to ignore Gali's common sense. And then, he gets poisoned by Lirek's staff, and after they escape, he's just separating again. But Gali tells him no, they've gotta gather the Toa again, and he again relents, but is clearly angrier about it. Then, when he, Liwa, and Gali are viewing the lava where Takoro once was, and she expresses concern about the obviously growing infection from that scratch, he gets mad that she's worried about that instead of his entire village being sunk into lava, and outright brushes her off when she tells him about unity again. His sadness at the loss of his village is genuine, but even then, Tahu wouldn't be like that towards her normally. And here we see what's been hinted at manifest. The anger from Kurak's staff quickened the onset of the poison, and now, like the Rahi of old, his mask is infected, and he's angry on top of that. And I highlight this less for its own sake, but more because it's something I only picked up on because I know the Toa so well from prior continuity. This part of the movie is not well communicated, and it all ties back to the Koli scene. If that scene of them being overly antagonistic towards each other had not been there, or at least had been better written, this plot thread would not be as confusing. It's really weird how one moment can screw up a narrative for the uninitiated. But anyway, back to the stuff you actually came for. Liwa tells Takua to go warn Jala about the Rakshi, and he barely manages to escape with Puku, while Pohatu and Anua get their second wind and manage to bury the Rakshi in a bunch of rubble, but also succeed in burying themselves. Gali and Tahu's fight ends with Kopaka showing up and freezing him, and Kopaka then helps Liwa and Gali carry him out as the place collapses entirely. We cut to a typical Friday night in my basement. Maybe, delete that part. We cut to the Toa about to try and heal Tahu's infection before it destroys him. I'm gonna let Liwa powering up Tahu's sword pass, even though I don't think that's how Toa tools work, and just cut to the part where he's cured by magic bubble, with Gali obviously being drained by that. She recharges herself in a nearby pond. Another nice animation detail is that her blue gets more gray after the bubble thing, and as she recharges herself, it returns to normal. Mix that with her mask shifting, and her rotors actually being present in a few shots earlier, and it seems like they put a lot of attention into Gali's animation for some reason. Anyway, Kopaka just pulls a Batman on her as we fade over to Jala, climbing up the Mangai volcano when a tremor nearly throws him off the edge, which is when Takua shows up and tells him about the Rakshi attack. Jala naturally points out that the Evoki was never at Onokoro, but Takua says that they're more after the Herald. And you can definitely tell that this is when it clicks with Jala that they're finally on the same page, and at a guess, what his part in this truly is. We cut back to the Toa, as Tahu is woken up cured from his poisoning, and is certainly thankful for Gali's part in curing him. A nice moment between them, honestly. And now is when Jala and Takua finally arrive at their destination, Kini Nui.
No way. We've been all over the island just to wind up here?
I mean, spiritual journey or not, he kinda has a point. Anyway, Takua's shaking of the mask causes it to shoot off a beam of light, revealing a crystal structure within the Great Temple. However, this is also where the Rakshi arrive, all 6 of them, and we finally get verbal confirmation that Takua has accepted his duty as the Herald. They run into the center of some circle, and our trio of Liwa, Gali, and Tahu arrive, proclaiming that they are done running. And the other three soon arrive to join the fun, Anu and Pohatu having been rescued by Kopaka. How they knew to come here is uncertain. Like, Kopaka mentions it's on the way in the book, but how did he even know? But they unite their powers, and utilizing the sharing ability of the Kanohi Nuva, make a shield powerful enough to withstand the might of the Rakshi, symbolizing how they're strong in their unity. And I'll admit, as a fan, this fight is cathartic in many ways, showing the Toa uniting their powers to defeat these seemingly all-powerful foes. But there is some stuff to make fun of, like Turak's Oscar-worthy performance here, or this.
Back off!
Surprise.
Rakshi!
Leave the heavy lifting to me!
How is he doing that? So yeah, the Toa defeat the Rakshi, but they missed one unfortunately, and it's head straight for Jawa and Takua. Unfortunately, however, Takua is hit with a fear blast as they flee, and Jawa jumps on Turak's staff, being overwhelmed by his energies in a bid to save Takua. The Toa manage to surround Turak as Takua shakes off the fear blast, but it's obviously too late for Jawa, who simply tells Takua with his dying words that Takua knows who he is. Staring at his friend's body, and then at the mask, Takua puts together what Jawa already had, that his duty as the Herald has ended. It's time to embrace his destiny.
You know who you are.
I am Takanuva, Toa of Light.
There are many reasons I love this. To an outsider, this may just seem like a cliche. The dude we followed on the quest for a hero has actually been the hero this whole time. And it is. But the brilliance isn't in what Takua was in the movie, it's in what he was before the movie. Many met Takua as their viewpoint character, right from the beginning of 2001. They discovered the world of Motunui with him, and became heroes worthy of defending Kininui. They watched him face the Borak and the Borak Kal, and now they've been with him as the Rakshi pursued him. We've seen him fight and run, trying to be as great as the Toa heroes he and his fellow Matoran idolized. And now he's one of them. Considering how this was the last year of the Motunui era of the franchise, before it started to grow up a bit, as it were, I can't help but appreciate how good of a choice this is, in both a narrative and meta sense. Heck, there's even some bits you can analyze from his design alone. Look at his arms! In canon, Matoran who become Toa, with one Red Star-based exception at least, tend to base their appearance off what they think a Toa should look like. That's why Takanuva has the armor of a Toa Nuva, despite being a relatively normal Toa. But his arms hail from a very specific Toa. Why is that? Well, remember that psychic link Gali established with Takua back in Menog? Later material confirmed that link to still exist even after this point, so it's possible that this had an influence on his mental image of a Toa. Or maybe they just wanted the set to be able to hold his vehicle, I don't know. Anyway, the newly transformed Takanuva defeats the final Rakshi, and picks up his friend's body, carrying it past the other Toa, as Makuta vows that this will soon end. Later, we see Takanuva mourning, with Jawa's mask? Well, my best friend is dead, better rip off his face. I don't know, maybe this is some sort of symbolic thing, since the next movie has someone take off their mask as they die, but for now, it's just kinda weird. Takanuva is wondering if all this was really worth it, but Vakama confirms the obvious. The journey was more about Takua accepting his destiny, rather than the actual walking bit, and Takanuva says that Jawa's sacrifice will not be in vain. We fade to the Toa assembling the Yusanui, a vehicle which will find Makuta's lair via one of the Roxy's Karada. It was at this point in editing that I realized I never explained what the Karada are. Basically, they're the slug things in the Roxy. They came out of Makuta's leg earlier. Holly walks in with Jalla's mask, stating that he was Takua's herald, and will continue leading him to victory as she mounts his mask on the Yusanui. Bohatu wonders where all the Toa will sit, but Takanuva reveals that the Toa will not be joining him, obviously not wanting to get anyone else killed as a result of him. He simply tells them to gather the Matoran and Turaga, and wait for his return as he takes off from Makuta's lair, eventually crashing into a wall to get there. Afterwards, Hali reveals herself to have stowed away, simply stating that it's time someone was his chronicler, as Menok 2 actually gave her that position. Takanuva lets her follow him into Makuta's lair, but only so far, as he throws the Karada to the floor and tells Makuta that he can no longer hide in shadow. In fact, let's highlight this interaction a bit.
I am Shadow, the shadow that guards the gate. Now run along, or accept your doom. Toa of light, now so bold. But at heart, you are still just Takua. You failed to save your friend. You didn't even warn him. Perhaps for your next great failure, a simple game of Koli. Win, and you may try to open the gate. When you lose, I'll have that mask.
Let's take a moment to talk about how Makuta works. Fear. Fear and manipulation. In Menog, he took the form of a Matoran when he faced the Toa, stringing it as him representing the worst parts of the Matoran, their potential for evil and destruction. He also tapped into the Toa not knowing where they really came from, stating that they were born from nothing, and that he was nothing, implying that the Toa could have the same destructive capability, be just as bad as he was. Mix that in with some boasting about how great and powerful he is, and you have the perfect formula for how Makuta works in this era of Bionicle, and in some capacity, the entirety of the canon. He puts seeds of doubt into his opponents, because that's what gives him the edge. And he's convincing with that, because deep down, he believes at least some of the crap he's spewing. So where does the lie end and the truth begin? With the limited knowledge the Matoran and Toa have in this era, it's hard for them to tell. He works the secrets and half-truths of the Turaga to his advantage. As a Matoran, Takua was well aware of how evil and terrible Makuta is, almost to an exaggerated degree. But now, he's the light facing the shadow. The objective good guy. Or is he? You see, Makuta probably knew that Takua was the 7th Toa before anyone else, and while he did try to stop him from happening, he still implemented a backup plan. This scene.
I know who you are. I'm not afraid.
Even my shadows cannot hide your fear. Or the truth.
What truth?
That you will not find the 7th Toa. And deep down, you know it.
So I won't. Maybe Jala will.
And if he doesn't, he will die because of you. Bring me the mask, Takua. Bring it to me, and you won't lose your friend.
No. I won't let everyone down.
You fail them more if you refuse. For the mask, your villages and Jala will be spared. Don't be a fool.
Before anyone else even realized it, Makuta poked a hole in Takanuva's mental guise as the objectively good hero. He let his best friend die because of his irresponsibility. What kind of hero does that? Sure, we know that Jala did this on his own volition, but guilt rarely leaves things that clear. And to poke another hole, Makuta says this.
Toa of light, now so bold. But at heart, you are still just Takua.
That right there. That's how Makuta will win this fight. As if to boast, he says that he's no better than the Matoran he used to be. He's just a kid in shiny armor. What's he gonna do to freaking Makuta? And to rub it in, Makuta decides to play Koli, a Matoran sport. A sport Takanuva lost the championship to as a Matoran. All of this, plus Makuta's boasting, leaves just enough doubt in Takanuva's head to leave this fight in Makuta's favor. That is why Makuta leaves an impression. So yeah, the Koli match begins, and Hali, under earlier orders from Takanuva, summons the Matoran and Toa, who argue a bit until Hali finally talks them into coming down, where surprise surprise, Takanuva is losing the Koli match, but the two briefly stop when they see the crowd gathering. Makuta mocks him, stating that they will see him fail, but Takanuva says that even if he fails, the Matoran will go on, and will someday triumph. And this is where Makuta actually makes a mistake.
You actually believe I would let them return? They will not leave.
You see, Takanuva's guilt in this whole matter was that he let Jala die because of him. So Makuta's attempt to rub it in just fuels Takanuva beyond any doubt Makuta could place. This time, he's determined not to fail, or have anyone else die on his account. And so, he makes a final bid for victory. But of course, Makuta isn't done quite yet. As a master of just rolling with it, as future canon will show, he gets up and gives one last dose of deceit.
Well played, Toa. Now, I will protect Matanui from you.
Protect him?
Sleep spares him pain. Awake, he suffers.
You are not protecting him!
My duty is to the Mask of Shadows.
But that mention of the Mask of Shadows gives Takanuva an idea, and he decides to remove Makuta's mask. Well, in the movie he does. In the book, which is very obviously based on a slightly earlier draft of the script, he rather swaps masks with Makuta as they fall into the pit of, well, the book says Mercury, but it seems more logical to me for it to be energized protodermis. Bionicle the game seems to have taken some inspiration from that idea, and it makes Wakama's line in a moment make a bit more sense. But yeah, out from the pit rises a merging of Makuta and Takanuva. Takutanuva.
Light and shadow have become one.
Light has revealed the will of Matanui. Our brother must be awakened.
And so, Takutanuva lifts the gate, and everyone in the lair starts running out. But Takutanuva briefly stops Ali, since he wants to bring Jala back to life. The book says that the Makuta side did this, but it seems more like something the Takanuva side would do, just with Makuta's power. And so, with his duty done, Takutanuva gives in to the weight of the door, leaving the Evoki to just skitter across the floor. But Wakama picks it up and recites the three virtues over their symbol, which is just kinda conveniently there. With Hali representing unity, for her work in getting the Matoran down there, Jala's duty, for dying at Takua's defense, and finally, the Evoki to represent destiny, as Takanuva is resurrected. They say that this is to awaken Matanui, but this is really just the first step. What's really been accomplished is the rediscovery of Mechanui, the city of the Great Spirit, as our film ends. So overall, what are my thoughts on this film? Personally, I can't help but love it. Are there flaws here and there? Oh, most certainly. While I like the animation for the most part, there are times when you can clearly spot errors, like frozen people, characters missing pieces for a few shots, and a lot of clipping happens with the Mask of Light. And while I do like the art style for the most part, like emphasizing the bio part of biomechanical, this can lead to things like the Toa having these weird brains in their gearboxes and stuff. Additionally, the film uses a lot of textures to simulate detail. And while it works for the most part, when it sticks out, it really sticks out. And the HD upscaling that fans on YouTube have given this film do those shots no favors. Additionally, while the story is good for reasons I have more than gone over in this review, there are some hiccups like the Coley scene with the Toa. Otherwise, I can't help but love this movie, and feel that it's very underappreciated, even among Bionicle fans. And that closes the book on this year of Bento Fire. Overall, while I'm sad that I was absent for most of it, getting to do this review made everything kinda worth it. And hey, maybe now that I killed Santa, Christmas will finally be peaceful around here. I mean, I can't imagine anything possibly going wrong now. What the heck? Love is what's this third word?